What if Yuji was born in the Gojo clan, carrying both Limitless and the Six Eyes from birth? Would Ryuma and Sukuna still find a way back into the modern era? Would Kenjaku's 1,000-year plan even survive against this version of Yuji? And what happens to Megumi Fushiguro? Does he still end up where fate originally placed him? Or does his story become something much darker? Well, for any of this to make sense, we have to go back to the hidden inventory mission. In the OG story, Toji Fushiguro almost killed Satoru Gojo. He only survived because he awakened reverse curse technique right before death and healed himself in the middle of collapsing. But in this version, that awakening never happens. The inverted spear of heaven goes through his throat, the bleeding never stops, and the strongest sorcerer of his generation dies on the street before he can even become the honored one. And the second Gojo is gone, every fragile balance the Jujutsu world depended on starts falling apart. Master Tengen no longer has a Six Eyes user to secure the future. The Gojo clan has no heir left powerful enough to scare anyone. The higher-ups lose their only real safeguard. And at the same time, the Zenin clan starts filling the power gap because nobody strong enough is left to keep them in check. And somehow, this is only where the chaos begins. When Satoru Gojo dies, the silence afterward shocks everyone. Toji completes the contract, takes his payment, and leaves alive. He's still the same man as before, calm, cold, and completely practical. The Time Vessel Association gets exactly what it wants. The Star Plasma Vessel is gone, Master Tengen's merger never happens, and the balance of the Jujutsu world slowly starts changing in ways nobody expected. But the deeper damage is much quieter than that. In the OG timeline, Toji almost said he had no final words at all. Then he thought about Megumi. He told Gojo that his son would be sold to the Zenin clan in a few years. Then he said, do whatever you want with that information. That was the closest Toji ever came to asking someone for help. But in this timeline, Gojo is not there to hear those words. He's dead on the ground, and Toji walks away without telling anyone. This means there's no intervention. No white-haired teacher appears in front of a middle school kid and offers him a different future. The Zenin clan senses something. Megumi's 10 Shadows technique is starting to awaken, and they move forward with the purchase. But then the story takes an even darker turn. The Zenin clan pays for Megumi Fushiguro and takes him in. However, Sumiki, his stepsister, is not part of the deal. She has no curse technique, so the clan sees no value in her. She's left behind, and Megumi carries that separation with him into the household that becomes his entire world. Then, years pass. The Jujutsu world keeps moving, but the hole left by Satoru Gojo never really goes away. Then something happens that nobody expected. Defying all odds, a child is born into the Gojo clan with both the Six Eyes and the Limitless technique. Most importantly, that child is Yuji. He grows up with a name, a purpose, and a power that was never supposed to belong to someone like him, and the Jujutsu world watches him carefully, because the last person born with the Six Eyes changed everything around them. Meanwhile, in the Zenin clan household, Megumi is learning what it means to be a Zenin. The clan does not raise him like a family, they train him like a weapon. They force the 10 Shadows technique through brutal training, watching which Shikigami he can tame and tracking his progress like he's a tool they paid money for. Sumiki is separated from him, and getting back to her becomes one of the few things still keeping Megumi connected to his humanity inside of that household. He eventually enters Jujutsu High carrying deep resentment towards the Jujutsu world, not just towards the Zenin clan, but towards the entire system that allowed children to be bought and turned into tools for someone else's plans. And across the country, Kenjaku is watching all of this and changing his plans. In the OG timeline, he created Yuji Itadori to be the perfect vessel for Sukuna, but now Yuji belongs to the Gojo clan and carries the Six Eyes, which makes using him as a vessel almost impossible. But Kenjaku is patient. He has waited for thousands of years, and what he sees in Megumi could become even more valuable than Yuji under the right conditions. Megumi is already a 10 Shadows user who has started taming Shikigami. He is already showing the potential to one day control Maharaga, and that's when everything completely breaks apart. Kenjaku understands something most of the JJK world still hasn't figured out. Sukuna's return is never going to be clean or simple no matter which vessel he used, but the vessel's technique matters a lot because it changes what Sukuna can do after taking over the body. In the original story, Riben Sukuna's obsession with Megumi ran so deep that he made a secret binding vow with Yuji just to set up the transfer. He wanted the 10 Shadows because a user who controls Maharaga and the full Shadow arsenal becomes a completely different level of threat. Kenjaku has access to the same strategy, and without Yuji as an option, Megumi becomes the obvious and even better target. So Kenjaku starts moving pieces. The Disaster Curses, Jogo, and the others who carry Sukuna's ideology as a part of who they are. They all begin working with Kenjaku to collect Sukuna's fingers across Japan. Mahito is experimenting on human souls and building the kind of record that makes him important to Kenjaku's plan. Collecting the fingers takes time, but Kenjaku has always played the long game. One by one, the fingers are gathered, and with Megumi now easier to reach through the Zenin clan structure, the moment to act starts getting closer. Kenjaku, Mahito, and the other curses ambush Megumi, overwhelm him, and start force-feeding him the fingers one after another until Sukuna's presence inside his body becomes too strong to suppress. Sukuna incarnates inside Megumi, and the first thing he does is see what he has gained. The 10 Shadows technique is there. The Shikigami Megumi spent years taming under the Zenin clan's brutal training are now fully available to Sukuna, and now the potential to tame Maharaga belongs entirely to him, on his own time and under his own control. But Megumi is still fighting from inside. The resistance is real and slows Sukuna's curse energy output. However, Sukuna has no patience for an incomplete vessel, and here it gets crazier. Uramen prepares the bath using the Zenin clan's disciplinary pit, the same place the clan once used for punishment. Sukuna submerges and lets the cursed energy solution press Megumi Megumi's soul deeper into silence. But the next move pushes everything beyond control, because even after the ritual, there's still one thing inside Megumi that Sukuna sees as the final anchor keeping him in the fight: Sumiki Fushiguro. She is the reason Megumi is still resisting. She's the reason he's still holding on to something inside a body that no longer belongs to him. So Sukuna kills her. He simply removes the one emotional connection still keeping Megumi's will alive. And after that, Megumi's soul sinks into darkness, and Sukuna gains complete control over the body. The 10 Shadows technique, including a fully tamed Maharaga, now fully belongs to the King of Curses. But then things become infinitely more dangerous when Toji gets this information, because remember, in this timeline, Toji is still alive, and he's not a man who wastes time on regret. He leaves the Zenin clan, sells his son to them, and believes the 10 Shadows technique would give Megumi a better life than Toji's cursed empty bloodline could ever. Then he moves on, with the cold practicality that shaped every choice he made. But later in the future, the news reaches him. His stepdaughter is dead, killed by the thing now wearing his son's face. And his son has gone in a different way, buried beneath a presence so overwhelming and ancient that Megumi barely exists anymore. Toji is not someone who handles this emotionally. Instead, he starts hunting down everyone connected to what happened. The Zenin clan handed his children into the situation. Kenjaku has a hand in every step of the plan, and Sukuna is walking around in a body that still has his son's eyes. Obviously, Toji cannot fight Sukuna directly and survive, especially with Sukuna in his current state. But Toji does not need to fight Sukuna to make things harder for everyone around him. He starts destroying the system Kenjaku built, and he does it with the focused efficiency of a man who has nothing left to lose. Jujutsu High receives confirmation from multiple sources at the same time. Sukuna has returned. The vessel is Megumi, and the threat level is unlike anything the school has dealt with before. In the OG timeline, Sukuna was already the strongest cursed spirit in recorded history. He was a monster from the Heian era, and even his fingers were classified as special grade cursed objects. But the version they are fighting now has the same base power combined with Megumi's 10 Shadows technique and a fully tamed Maharaga. Divine General is a Shikigami that no 10 Shadows user in history has ever defeated alone during the ritual. So Sukuna spends his time inside the vessel, working through the exorcism ritual on his own terms. Now, that adaptation power belongs to him, and he can use it however he wants. The world is now facing a version of Sukuna that is clearly stronger than his original Heian era self, and the higher-ups are scared and trying to figure out how dangerous the situation is, but none of them have a real answer because Gojo is dead. Then Yuji, who grew up hearing what the Six Eyes and Limitless mean to the Jujutsu world, steps forward. He doesn't call it bravery. To him, it's just a thing that makes sense, because if he does not move, nobody else will. And then Yuji flips the entire situation upside down. The difference between Yuji and Satoru Gojo is obvious before the final battle even starts, and it is not the power gap people expect. Yuji has the Six Eyes, he has the Limitless, he has Infinity running automatically at all times. Anything that gets close to him slows down and stops before it can touch him. The Six Eyes also handle the constant calculations needed to keep Infinity active, so Yuji does not burn himself out trying to maintain it. In terms of raw technique, he still has everything Satoru Gojo once used, but Yuji does not think the same way Gojo did. Gojo always saw himself as a ceiling. He wanted to be strong enough that everyone else could stand behind him safely. Yuji thinks the opposite way. He wants people fighting besides him, not standing behind him while he protects them alone. So he builds a team with the clear intention of actually fighting together. Aoi Todo comes in first because Todo and Yuji trust each other completely without needing a long conversation. Sukuna fights by predicting where his opponents will be and what they will do next. Boogie Woogie totally messes with that. And Maki Zenin brings something different. Her heavenly restriction means she has no cursed energy at all, which makes her very hard for techniques to detect or trap, and she still hits hard enough to matter anyway. Yuta completes the core group. Then there's Toji. He doesn't join because of trust or teamwork. He's just there because his son is inside. When the final battle starts, Sukuna does not hesitate. He never does. The King of Curses opens the fight with Cleave and Dismantle, sending invisible slashes across the entire battlefield before the other side can even react. The slashes hit everything: concrete, air, and anyone standing in the wrong place. They come from every direction at the same time. That is what makes Malevolent Shrine so dangerous. It turns the entire area into a zone of constant destruction. But Yuji is not caught off guard. The Six Eyes process everything, every movement, every cursed energy signature, every 10 Shadows Shikigami before it fully appears. Infinity handles the rest. Every dismantle slows down more and more as it gets closer, and Sukuna quickly realizes this isn't a fight he can win by attacking from a distance. Infinity does not bend or weaken, but then comes a moment that changes the entire fight. Sukuna alters his strat and summons Maharaga. The Divine General comes out from the shadows of Megumi's technique, and the wheel in its head starts turning. Maharaga only needs to experience the technique once before adapting to it, and Infinity is the first thing Sukuna targets. Because if Maharaga can get through Infinity, then everything else about Yuji becomes vulnerable too. So Maharaga begins adapting, and that's what it's always done. It's the reason no 10 Shadows user in history has ever fully tamed it through a normal exorcism ritual. The adaptation wheel turns once, and Maharaga's approach to Infinity starts to change. It turns again, and the adaptation becomes stronger. Sukuna is not going to rush this. He's patient because he knows he already has the strongest weapon in the room. But Maharaga is not the only one adapting. Todo starts reading the rhythm of Maharaga's movements, and uses Boogie Woogie to disrupt its positioning whenever it gets close to landing a critical hit. The swap happens, and instead of striking Yuji, Maharaga suddenly finds himself several meters away, facing the wrong direction. That gives Yuji the small amount of time he needs to recover and move again. Maki is directly fighting Sukuna because her lack of cursed energy energy makes it harder for Malevolent trying to target properly. She obviously can't stop Sukuna, but she can interrupt him, force him to react, and buy time in a way normal sorcerers can. And that's only possible because she has no cursed energy signature to trap. Meanwhile, Toji Fushiguro is doing something far more personal. He's not fighting Sukuna directly. He's trying to reach Megumi. He fights through every part of the battle, looking for a moment where whatever is left of Megumi inside that body becomes reachable. He knows that moment may never come, but he keeps fighting towards it anyway. At first, the turning point does not seem important. It just looks like another moment in a fight that has gone on for so long the entire battlefield is destroyed. But Maharaga has a limit that Sukuna understood from the start, and Yuji has been building towards that weakness the entire fight. Maharaga's wheel adapts to repeated exposure. Infinity has been the target from the beginning, and Maharaga has slowly been working towards a way around it. But what Maharaga is adapting to is a version of Infinity that Yuji has been using the entire fight, the normal passive state. Yuji has not really used blue or red since the fight started. At the same time, the Six Eyes have been tracking every adaptation cycle Maharaga completes and the direction each adaptation is moving towards. When Yuji finally uses Hollow Purple, Maharaga has no adaptation ready for it. The wheel has been adapting to Infinity, not to blue and red crashing together into something completely different. The moment those two forces collide, they create pure destruction. The imaginary mass tears through the space where Maharaga is standing and keeps going. Sukuna takes part of the impact, and for the first time in the fight, real damage appears on his face instead of calm confidence. His reverse curse technique activates immediately, but the opening is there, and the moment it appears, everyone moves at the same time. This is not just Yuji finishing the fight alone. This is the moment the whole team has been waiting for. Todo already understands the situation before Sukuna even starts healing. Boogie Woogie activates and instantly swaps Yuji into close range. At the same time, Todo slightly shifts Sukuna's position and throws off the angle his RCT needs to fully stabilize. Maki attacks him from the side before he can react properly. She has been waiting for this exact moment, when Sukuna's attention is split in too many directions at once. The hit lands clean, and it lands hard. Yuta pours everything he has left into that opening, and Yuta still has a massive amount of cursed energy left, so he doesn't hold back at all. And Toji, who has spent the entire fight trying to reach something inside Sukuna's vessel, instead of just fighting him, finally reaches Megumi. But in that 1 second, while all the chaos weakens Sukuna's control for just a moment, something inside the body changes. Toji notices it immediately. He cannot pull Megumi out. He doesn't have a technique that can do that, but he puts himself right in front of the vessel, and does the one thing Toji Fushiguro has never managed to do when it mattered. He stays. The combined pressure starts breaking Sukuna's control. The bath ritual loses its hold once the cursed energy output drops too low to maintain it. Megumi Fushiguro surfaces, alive but barely. Sukuna is forced out of the vessel. The fingers still inside the body are destroyed before Sukuna can reform around them. Without an anchor, the King of Curses has nothing left to hold on to. Kenjaku's plan, built over centuries of manipulation and patience, collapses the moment Sukuna is gone. Yuji and Yuta track Kenjaku down before he can build anything new from the damage. And that's the end. The threat is over. Megumi survives, and Yuji, the boy who's supposed to become someone else's weapon, becomes something the Gojo clan was not prepared for. A person who ends up with people besides him instead of standing alone.